In our Project 2 critique, we're going to start with Kirby in this video and looking at his Rock'em Sock'em Cowboys, or robots, I'm sorry. Alright, yes, let us start with that. Am I in? Oh, I am. Oh, good. I'm in the shutter speed. So we have several of these. We have this one, and let's see if we find one that really stands out to us. So, I mean, playing with slower shutter speeds. Holy cow! I think it's effective and working for this. I'm not sure which one I like the best, though I think they all have some interesting qualities to them. Trying to decide if I like seeing the hands or not seeing the hands. And the background information becomes important, too. This one, I don't see the hands, I just see the robots, and there's some interesting, action going on in it, which I think works. This one, we have both of them with the almost a double vision sort of thing, so that works. I wish the background works. I mean, it doesn't distract, but it doesn't add or complement either, I guess. Is my thought, and I almost wish I were seeing like fake people in stands, or maybe even we just made it darker, because quite often watching boxing, you have all these lights on the ring, and then the crowd is very quickly gets much darker because all light is just in that one spot on the boxing ring. I could have added a nice effect to it. Anyways, I'm getting pretty nitpicky on that. It's good exploration of motion, a lot of different ways. Kind of like this one, maybe the best. I just see this almost double vision of these things. I kind of like this one here where the robot head is, I'm assuming got rocked. Its head popped up. To me, it almost feels the other way, like it starts here and then goes down. But so, all right, let's move along. We have the tire swing. Not sure if we're trying to pan with this image. Whatever we're doing, I think it's interesting. That's the most important thing in the end anyways, right? These skills are important to understand, not in and of for themselves, but to understand how we can construct interesting photographs to use these different techniques. And I really like this image. I think it works both in color and in black and white. I think we get the sky gets a little blown out in the black and white here. We need to pull that back a little bit, but I do like a little bit more softer information that we pull out here. And this becomes the balance there between the global adjustments, which is all I really asked you to do in this. But this image seems like it could use some more local adjustments. Like 80% of what the corrections made improve the image, but it's this 20% area that I want to back off a little bit and bring just a little more texture. Not a lot of texture, just a little bit, a few lines in there. And I could, if I can just select that area and then alter that area alone, I might be able to bring back some of that information. So I'd have to select it, feather it, and then adjust it. But I do like both of these. And I think they're panning images, and they certainly qualify. We got blur, but these are distinctly sharper than what's going on back there. So I think I actually like this composition a little better. I like the diagonal of those tires. All right. This composition isn't bad. This is good. In some ways, it's technically better because you don't have that problem in the upper left like we did with the previous ones. But how many nice panning images? Tires do we need? The answer is probably just one. This is also a very different take on the tire, a much more abstract take on the tire. You may really kind of enjoy this image. It has a lot of movement in it, but it's a different kind of movement. The other one with the panning, we were following it, and you could see that moving back and forth. With this one, it's just a circle and another repetition. So it was repetition of all these shapes, the rope and the repeated rope and the blur of the stuff back here, and there's just a lot of movement in this. And actually, it feels like an image I could look at for a while. I think I like the color a little bit better on that one. All right, now we're into the painting with light. I like your approach that I'm seeing here uh, with this image. I'm not sure which was the original, but of the two, I am leaning more towards the higher saturated image. So I don't know if you added the saturation or if you took out the saturation. But whatever it is, I'm more attracted to this, as most people are more attracted to higher saturation in images. And I actually do a lot of black and white photography with no saturation, and I love those images. But you know, most people react more positively towards saturation, and you know, there's a lot interesting history in photography with that, is in how we you know, how manufacturers make their digital cameras and the processing that happens within that camera from the RAW format to the JPEG format. And they usually make the images sharper or a little more contrasting, probably more saturation a lot of times. But different manufacturers have different opinions on that. So if I take a shot in Nikon, a shot in a Canon, which my wife has Canon, and I got some Nikons, and they look different. And the Canons seem a bit more saturated in their color. But the Nikons may be a bit more accurate, particularly in terms of skin tone, which is also interesting because historically, back when we had film, Fuji was known for really nice, high saturated film, but it wasn't great for photographing people because the people would be oversaturated. Kodak actually balanced their film more towards skin tones as opposed to the environment, where Fuji seemed to balance it more towards the environment. And then we also have a whole debate in film about the racist tendencies of film to only be, you know, they used Caucasian people. And that was their only real consideration in balancing for skin tones. So African Americans, people of different skin tones or darker skin tones, would not record as accurately as, you know, white people. Anyway, back to your photograph. I like the composition. I like the silhouette that you create. I like that I see your glasses. And I like how you're playing with the light out here, where it's not just some lines, but it's interaction between the silhouette and the intense saturation out here in the circle. And then also the stuff that I see around that, all those colors. And there's nice texture. I don't know how you got that texture on there. Makes me kind of think that maybe this was the first image and then you increase the saturation. I could be wrong. I'm not sure how that works. That would be my guess. Because then when we manipulate it, that's one thing with post-production. Anytime we add post-production, we can exaggerate imperfections in that capture. So, you know, we might actually be seeing like the individual pixels here, and that's where we get this grainier feel to this. So, you know, and anytime we manipulate an image, there's a destructive act to that where we're losing information. Mostly losing information. There are times you can gain information. So, okay, well, let's keep. I like that photograph. I think it actually works in grayscale just as well as in color. Like, there's really interesting textures. It's a smoother texture, but we see all this line, you know, movement, and there's still nice interaction between this and the figure. This, I think, is actually really nicely composed and well done painting with light image. Well done, Kirby. This is also really interesting. I like the reflection and the lights and how you're composing and playing with it. And, you know, so, yeah, I don't know. Well done again. Nice. This is good too. I like the multiple and the bigger effects that I see. I don't know if you zoomed in while doing this, but it looks like you had a lot of fun with painting with light, and I would say that the fun and the exploration paid off. Really, it feels like a thought, or, you know, like mist or something escaping here. But then I see, you know, so I have all this squiggly information here, and then I have the layers of this rectangle TV, the different sizes on top of that, and it creates a really interesting, very dynamic image, very expressive image. Very subjective and objective, all those things that I like in painting with light. You're doing well, Kirby. I think I like the other one better, but this one is interesting too. This one I would like to, you know, I like there's the face. If I could pull that out a little bit more, but the explorations are well worth it. I would say and these are interesting too. I think maybe technically we get a little blown out here, but I like the light and the sign and the figure and the barn and the close cropping of this image, like it's very zoomed in. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you've played a lot with painting with light before or not, but I would say you're dealing well with it here. So I find many of these images engaging and worth looking at and thinking about. Yes. So, okay, I think we covered the images, Kirby. So, good. Let's move along here. We are going to look at, all right, anyways, we're going to look at this portfolio, painting with light. I really like those. Let's start with these flowers. So, I don't know, are you holding the flower and the camera and then moving them together and then using the background? Whatever the effect is, I enjoy the effect mark. So, I like the color of the flowers. Flowers are pretty and often photographed, but here you're definitely pushing them beyond the way what most people photograph them. And I think it's effective and interesting. I could see more explorations in this. So I like the sharp color. I like the contrast of these reds and the pinks and the greens, but in addition to that, we also have the sharp and the blur contrast, which adds a whole new dimension to this photographing flowers. And the same with this one. I like overall the sharpness here, and then there's these blurring horizontally somewhat diagonal lines. And there's also a little curvilinear nature to them. But I also like the sharp and the soft of that back there. Very interesting photographs of flowers. This is really abstract, but also really engaging. So I don't know what's going on here. Pewter telephone cord. To me, it almost looks like an airport or some sort of landscape or cars or something. I like it. It feels very landscapey to me. There's a horizon line. It could be some trees, some things moving here. But you're telling me this is very something different. I don't know that I care at all what I'm looking at, but I really like the composition. And, I might be contradicting myself a little bit here. If you watch some other videos and hear me talk about painting with light, I like the objective-subjective interaction. This is very subjective, but I also can relate to it and sort of put some of my own ideas into the objectiveness of it. But there's just a lot of nice textures. I like these dots here, and then the lines, and this red line, and these lines, and more lines, and this atmospheric feel up here of clouds. But I suspect it's just interior. It's all created. It's a very nice image, Mark. Okay. I think this one works well too, but I like the other one better because I can associate more. This becomes almost more like just moving in squiggly light lines, and I can't relate to it in an objective sense as easily as the previous one. Though there is a nice variety of the lights, the colors, the textures that you create here that there's a nice balance in this. I can see other people maybe reacting more positively towards me. I like it, but I just like that one a whole lot more. Simply because I can relate to it in a landscapey way. And then we have these images, Mark. These are just fascinating and surreal feeling. And bizarre, but just well done, well explored. I like the color. I like the black and white. I could see this being played with a lot. I don't know if you've played with painting with light much before, but these are certainly interesting explorations and almost fully resolved. I mean, maybe they are fully resolved explorations in painting with light. Well done. I like this too. Now I think we're playing with longer exposures than moving the subjects. This is funny. This has such a different feel than this. There's like a softness here, and it almost looks to me like an autochrome. An autochrome is one of the first color processes developed by Lumiere brothers in France in early 1900s, 1902, 1903. And they use potato starches on glass and created this photographic process, and the colors are often soft and the contrast is soft, but they're full range color images. They just have this feel to them. This one feels to me like an autochrome, and I like that feel, and it. I like the park and the imagery, and there's this. I described the previous ones as surreal, and there's like some violence in those previous images, like this intensity. This doesn't have this intensity, but it has this very imagination quality and this ghost quality. It's a much softer spoken image, but it also seems to have some surrealistic characteristics, but it has a totally different feel, maybe perhaps emotionally than the previous images. And I like the color better than I like the black and white, though there are such nice, delicate values in the grayscale. That could work really well, but I just like how I relate to it as an autochrome. Maybe it's just being a photo geek that speaks to me. And then we have more explorations here and movement and light, and I really like how you're playing with the media. It has another depth because you have your phone, camera on your phone, and playing with that self-portrait, and then your hands, and then the movement, and the blur, and it's a very deeply layered image, as I think all of these are, as I look at this portfolio. Very deeply layered imagery that I'm seeing. And again, it works well in color. It works well in black and white. It feels fully resolved. It feels interesting. It feels engaging. There's such a variety in this portfolio, Mark, and different ways you're dealing with things. They're all successful. I mean, my least favorite one is this, but even that one's very successful in a lot of different ways. You could pull out 4 or 5 different projects just from what you've worked on here, and push them and explore them. So I don't recall exactly what you're thinking about for your final portfolio, but if you're needing something, maybe consider one of these. I like this. 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 All right. I like these. All right, great. Let me move on and do one more critique with this. Okay, so I really like the softness of this image. I like the movement. I like the sharp blur contrast. And I just like the very delicate value balance in here. It's so soft. Everything feels soft. The movement creates softness. There's a softness in the values and the relationship. Lower contrast, and there's this little bit of contrast here. It's a really beautiful image. It's a very almost modernist photographic feel to it. All right, and you are where there's water, and I am jealous. I grew up near Lake Superior. I think you're in Massachusetts. So you got a bigger body of water. But Lake Superior's pretty big. But I like the waves. There's actually a beautiful portfolio of some photographer out in Minnesota, Lake Superior, doing these great images of just waves, zooming in on them. And I can't remember his name right now. But anyways, this is reminding me of that a little bit. I spent a lot of time on the shore just exploring images like this, but I think this is better than anything I've gotten. It's been a while since I've lived near Lake Superior and had the chance to just actively explore it a lot. But I like the splash and the contrast of the rocky shore and the coastline and the water. I wish the horizon, I just want to twist this image, and I think you go in there and just rotate it in Photoshop or something and get that horizon straight. Boom, and you got a nice photograph. Yeah, I like that one. And I like the play, and I like the play of that sharp, that soft. Your long exposure allows you to get this wave and catch it in the water and have it somewhat blur, but you also have, probably, I don't know if you're using a tripod or you're just being real still, but nice sharpness with that. So, image that resonates really well with me. This works well too. We're doing some panning, and I kind of like, I like the. We see some of the face, but we don't see the eyes. So there's this, not just looking at who is this person, just more of this person. And then there's this nice, bold, complementary color scheme, red, the greens, and then the blur and the verticality of the figure contrast the horizontal blur. And it's slightly to the right in the composition. It's well composed, well executed. I might like maybe to see him just a teeny bit sharper, maybe. I don't know. Maybe that would be distracting. But I think that composition works pretty well. I like this image in color too. I think I like it. I really love the black and white 100%. This one, I think, just needs some of that manipulation, like lightening it a little bit. I would drag up the curve. If I'm in Photoshop, I'd go to curves and I just drag the middle of that curve up a little bit and soften this. And I think you'd have just a successful image in color as you do in grayscale. But this one needs a little more attention. And it's probably the original file and you didn't manipulate it. But it could use some similar manipulation there. And you could have an image that worked both color, black and white. All right, now we're painting with light, and between these two things, I'm more attracted to this because if you've listened to the other videos, I really like that objective-subjective relationship that painting with light offers us. We can look at, photographs are typically thought of as objective objects, where you can see what we see, you see real things. But the painting with light gives us this ability to just create, draw, similar like a painter or a drawer. And there's an interaction. Now there's a disconnect to me between the interaction, though. I mean, there is a circle and almost target feel that creates a figurative element. Almost feels like an infrared image, and it has this texture to it. So I'm assuming you did some post-processing on this, maybe to pull out this information. And I think that's a good thing. I like that information. I would like to see a little bit more of what you're creating here. I don't see a relationship between the drawn stuff in here other than compositional relationship. And I'd like to see something more that drives me to think and connect those things together. I like that one much better than this one because I lose all the objective context and I'm just left with light squiggles. And it's all right, and the squiggles are interesting. But that leaves me personally feeling a little flat about the image. Yeah, it's so much better with the movement here. I don't know if you had to use a flash here. Yeah, flash on. Feels like a flash. You have that hard line from a flash. And it's falling, and you're capturing a stop motion. So, I mean, it's successful in that regard, but much more aesthetically successful with the longer shutter speed and the blur of the image. It almost feels clinical. Feels like Edgerton. Edgerton created the strobe, so he did actually the bullet through the apple photograph. I don't know if you've seen that. Most people have seen that image. Yeah, so feels like a study there. I like this image actually quite a bit. I like the complementary color schemes. I like the composition itself. Nice use of thirds. Trees, space, trees, but I mean, what makes this image is the blur of the figure and how it abstracts that figure. And it creates a different texture, it has a different color, and is therefore very contrasting in regards to the environment, but still flows within that composition. I might, technically want maybe a little more texture in the sky, but maybe not. Maybe I need that separation, that starkness to push that forward. So, okay. Well, those are my thoughts here, and I think I'll move along.